Okay. Hi, everybody. It's nice to see you today, and hope those of you that are listening to this later enjoy our talk today. This is part of the Epi and Evaluation Practice Career Speaker Series, and without further ado, I'll start. The purpose of this speaker series is to provide students with exposure to professionals with PhDs who work in epidemiology and evaluation practice careers so they can make more informed choices about non-academic careers. And many audiences are going to watch this on YouTube and Zoom and everything like that. I expect postdocs, PhD students, master's students, and any students that are interested in practice careers. It is led by myself, Emily, and SORT, and it's funded by a tiny little grant for food by the Vice Provost back in 2019, just in time for COVID. And it's supported by a lot of folks that are listed here. I'm going to go into our current agenda in a second, but I just want to mention that there's one last session of this series this year, and it's Amanda Smith, who's at the Baltimore City Health Department. She'll be coming on December 5th. And we do not currently have plans to continue this into the next calendar year unless we find a way to do that. So we may be able to do that if we still have some cash left over and some students are interested in providing that support. So today I am super excited to introduce Pam Dopart. Did I say it right? Okay. Who's an environmental and occupational health scientist with Exponent. And Emma Moynihan, who's one of our own from SORT here. Actually, they're both Hopkins grads, and Emma was in the SORT group. Very important member of the group. Not that anybody's unimportant, but maybe I'm speaking with affection here. And she is also with Exponent Consulting. Pam is an environmental and occupational health scientist at Exponent, a scientific and engineering consulting firm. She specializes in exposure assessment methods to inform EPI studies and health risk assessments, and also has experience evaluating exposures in occupational environmental settings from consumer products. Her work often includes evaluating and interpreting EPI research and discussing this literature with the general public, trying to help them make sense of it, and other interested stakeholders. She got her PhD in environmental health sciences at Johns Hopkins here, and her MPH from University of Michigan School of Public Health. She also got a certificate in health risk assessment from our Risk Sciences and Public Policy program. Before joining Exponent, she was in the Occupational Environmental EPI branch of the Division of Cancer Epidemiology and Genetics at the National Cancer Institute, and her research focused on improving methods for assessing occupational environmental exposures for EPI studies of cancer. We're excited to hear your journey in a moment. So Dr. Moynihan is an environmental health scientist with expertise in environmental EPI, applied EPI, biostats, exposure, and risk assessment. As a scientist at the consulting firm Exponent, Emma applies her EPI and quantitative skills to a wide variety of industries, including pharmaceuticals, medical devices, nutrition, food safety, and consumer products, and chemical regulations, utilities, and renewable energy. Wow, I can't wait to hear all about this. Dr. Moynihan received her PhD in environmental health sciences and her MPH from good old Johns Hopkins Bloomberg School of Public Health. And before she started working at Exponent and before grad school, she worked at ICF, where she helped in the design and implementation of EPI surveillance programs for government clients. I did not recall that either, Emma, so I'm learning about you. So what we'll do is we'll hear about their path and background and current work in whatever order they want to talk about it. And then we'll open it up for questions. And for those of you who are listening to it on YouTube for the EPI class, I will ask your questions on your behalf. We will eat up and drink up maybe in the gallery from whenever we're finished until whenever we're full. And with that, I will stop this share and I will bring up our two speakers. Is one of you who wants to start?
I think I'm first.
Okay, great. All right. Okay, take it away, Pam. You can feel free to, I don't know if you want to stand here and move your slides or you want to sit or it's up to you.
No problem. I'll stand.
Okay.
Make it easier.
Well, hi, everyone. It's good to see you. Thanks for inviting us. Em and I are looking forward to sharing a little bit about Exponent and what we do there. And what we thought we would first start with kind of, sharing how we got there. As Melissa said, we are both Hopkins graduates, so we'll talk a little bit about, our decision to go back for our PhDs here, and then what we've been up to since then. Okay, and that's us. So my career in public health, I guess, unofficially began in undergrad. I went to James Madison University in Harrisonburg, Virginia, and I studied chemistry. But what I kind of learned while I was there was that I was actually more interested in public health. I just didn't have the words for it yet. I didn't know anything about the public health career, industrial hygiene, epidemiology. These were all terms I'd never heard before. But I do remember very distinctly in one of my chemistry lab courses, like pouring an acid into some funnel, thinking we should, I hope we were trained in, or like we should have some training for this. Like I know there's a health and safety person here somewhere who made sure we're wearing goggles and we're pouring things in the fume hood, but this feels like the kind of thing that we should have a lot of training in. And so I wonder if there's like a career in that. And I started learning about, lab safety officers and radiation safety officers. We had some X-ray machines in our facility, and started like doing Google searches over the summer before senior year of college, trying to figure out what I wanted to do next, and came across graduate programs in public health. And I thought, wow, this sounds really cool. And I found programs in industrial hygiene and occupational exposure assessment, and it just really spoke to me. And that's what I decided to start applying and do that, because I didn't really know what else I wanted to do. And just, I was in the marching band in high school and in most of college. Some of my closest friends are from band. I met my husband at the Hopkins Wind Ensemble up on Homewood campus. So band has always been a big part of my life. And when I was at JMU, freshman year, I was one of those people who wasn't into football. Like I couldn't tell you what the final score was at the end of the game. But by the time I left, I was really into it. And if you follow college football, JMU has switched into a new conference. They're now doing really well at a higher level. So it's been really fun to watch.
What instrument did you play?
Clarinet and saxophone. And I own a Barry sax, so one of the big ones. Which is my personal favorite to play. So I was playing clarinet in college. So I ended up going to the University of Michigan School of Public Health for my MPH in the environmental health sciences with a focus in industrial hygiene. So I took a lot of courses in occupational health and safety, but because it was an MPH program, I was taking epi, biostats, tox, just getting that well-rounded foundation in public health. And that's where I grew to love college football. I won't comment on Michigan right now and their NCAA allegations, but I am a big Michigan fan. And I love to go to, watch the games and go to them periodically. As part of my master's program, I did the 40-hour Haushofer training for OSHA. So that's me in a level A, full suit. I'm wearing the SCBA, tank of oxygen on my back. Really hard and challenging work, and it wasn't even real. We were just simulating conditions, but made me realize that, you know, emergency response work is very hard, and you know, thank you to those who do it, but it was not for me. But as part of the program, I spent the summer in between the 2 years doing an internship, I think like a lot of the MPH programs. And so I did a industrial hygiene internship at Sandia National Laboratories in New Mexico. Learned a lot there about, you know, how to do field sampling and write reports and such, but it was enough for me to kind of realize I didn't want a career as an industrial hygienist in, you know, for one company or one facility. And I really like the idea of working on a lot of different projects, answering a lot of different questions. So I met someone at an industrial hygiene conference who was working for ChemRisk, which is another scientific consulting firm. They are now part of Stantec. For a while, they were Cardno ChemRisk, and they were recently bought by Stantec, so a lot of different names. But at the time, they were just ChemRisk on their own. And they are basically can be considered a competitor to Exponent. They have, you know, industrial hygienists, toxicologists, epidemiologists, and they answer a lot of, you know, questions for their various clients in academia, government, industry. So I was interested in trying out consulting, and I always wanted to live in California, which is where the job was based. So I broke my parents' heart and I moved across the country. And I worked there for about 2 years as a health scientist.
Where in California?
Yeah, I was in San Francisco. And I like lived in, like I was in my mid-20s, so I lived in the city and, you know, really got to take it all in. It was great. And one thing I do remember is right after I started, I went to another industrial hygiene like meeting, and I was chatting with someone, and they asked me like, what do I do for a career? And I said, I started this consulting company, and they were very like taken aback, and they were basically, you know, how could you be in consulting? Like, you just started your career, you don't even know anything yet. Like, what are you consulting on? And besides being rude and kind of condescending, it's also not true, right? And I think Emma will be able to talk about this too when she comes up. Like, the skills that we learn here in any MPH or PhD program equips you to kind of hit the ground running in a scientific consulting field. And Emma and I are going to talk more about Exponent and some of the projects we do, but while it's true that you will learn more of those soft skills like client relationships and project management and budgeting and all of that, we have so much technical depth already as soon as we graduate here that you can kind of jump right into projects and really make a contribution, a significant contribution right away. So I always think back to that person and think how wrong they were. So anyway, when I was out there, I got to do lots of fun things and explore the whole West Coast. And I got really into snowshoeing because Tahoe was like right there. So that was really fun. But anyway, a life goal of mine, I guess. I'd always wanted to get my PhD. And I knew it would be a matter of when and not if. And after about 2 years out there, I decided to come back east to make my parents very happy. I'm from New Jersey, so Maryland is much closer, and I started here at Hopkins. So this was in 2010 that I started here. Peter Lees was my advisor. I was in the Environmental Health Sciences program, which I guess is EHE now, with a focus on occupational exposure assessment work. So both my PhD work and my postdoc are, you know, developing exposure estimates, occupational exposure estimates for epi studies. So I work very closely with a lot of, you know, highly respected epidemiologists. We discuss together the, you know, the challenges of exposure assessments, the kinds of information that you need to be able to collect in order to, you know, accurately address or evaluate someone's occupational exposure. Always happy to talk about that as well. But it was great. I enjoyed my time here. My dissertation focused on radiation exposures to nuclear naval shipyard workers. And it was in the context of an epi study with Jean Matinowski. He was an epidemiologist here for a long time. She had a large epi cohort that she was working on, so she was very kind to share some of the data with me so I could do some exposure assessment work. And when I finished here, I was like 95% sure that I didn't want to go into an academic career. I'm pretty sure I wanted to go back to consulting, but I wanted to hone my research chops a little bit more. So I took a postdoc at the National Cancer Institute. And I was there for about 2.5 years. doing a lot of occupational exposure assessment methods for epi studies of cancer. So a lot of the studies I worked at were general population studies where we had to try to assess exposures from a lot of different occupations. And one of my favorite projects that I have a publication on was trying to develop these like decision rules for assessing benzene exposure throughout an entire population, where you have, teachers and welders and, every career in between, and trying to find some way to be able to assess like thousands of jobs, right? Where there's no way you could individually go person by person or even job by job and really assess those occupational exposures. So we developed, basically I wrote a script in R, the decision rules where, if this is true and this is true, then you assign an exposure of this amount. And it was quite interesting. And then after about 2.5 years, I knew for sure I didn't want to go into an academic career, and I really wanted to go back to consulting. We can definitely talk about why and what I like about consulting. So I came to Exponent. I've been here about 5.5 years now. And while I'm here, worked on a lot of interesting projects that Emma and I are excited to talk about. And then one thing I'll just point out is, Exponent is very supportive of professional development activities. They encourage you to publish papers, continue to be active in scientific organizations, get on technical committees, and also get any certifications that might be relevant to your field. So I really had always wanted to become a certified industrial hygienist, get my CIH. So, I was able to do that while I was here. And then, grad school is stressful, as you guys know. There are days where things are just a little overwhelming. So one day in like my 3rd year, when I'd had just about enough, my friend and I drove up to Aberdeen. There's a skydiving facility there, and we jumped out of airplanes. And it was a good stress reliever. So anyway, that's my story. And I'll turn it over to Emma so she can share hers.
Okay, and then after you both share, we'll just put you up front and we'll just cover your questions.
Sure.
Wonderful.
Wonderful.
Good.
Let's see here. I've got a couple up already, but okay. I will start. So I was a history major in undergrad, and kind of came to the realization as I was graduating that I had no idea what I wanted to do. So I applied for every sort of fellowship under the sun. I applied for Peace Corps, I applied for Teach for America, Fulbright. Like I had no idea. I just knew I liked history and learning about people and events and trying to make sense in an order of things. And I ended up going with a Fulbright. And I was in rural Malaysia for a year, teaching in a school there and doing some different youth development programs. And that's really where I got really kind of similar to Pam, got the vocabulary and understanding of what public health was. I always really enjoyed history, but then I also really enjoyed math growing up. And I think for me, history I just kind of naturally gravitated towards. Math I liked, but I never really knew what I was going to do with, finding the area of a trapezoid or something. It didn't make sense to me. And sort of through this experience with Fulbright, it was, oh, you know what, like epidemiology and biostatistics, I kind of think it's like math that matters. And so for me, those connected the dots as history and math. And so for me, public health is really a combination of those two subjects that I really like. I think, you can't really do epi if you don't understand the historical context of what's going on. So I finished Fulbright and I was like, I want to get into public health, but I didn't really have any experience in public health. So I basically took whatever job I could get, which I ended up working as a research assistant at the School of Medicine and Psychiatry, which was really interesting. I worked on a adolescent depression awareness program. So sort of similar, and we developed a program where teachers could, like in their health classes or other classes, teach children about symptoms of depression, bipolar disorder, and create awareness of that. So I worked on that for a little bit, and then some other sort of projects in the department that just needed some sort of support and sort of research assistance. And I really enjoyed that, but I wasn't ready to like narrow in on psychiatry. I didn't know. I just wanted to get that experience. So I thought I would explore a little bit more, and I took a job at ICF, which is a consulting firm. It's a little bit different than Exponent in the sense that most of ICF's clients, at least the ones I was working for, are almost all government clients. So things like the CDC or Department of Energy or EPA. And I really enjoyed that because I got a wide variety of different topic areas in public health that I could work in. So everything from foodborne illnesses to cancer epidemiology we worked on youth behavior surveillance surveys. So it was a wide variety, and I kind of got to figure out what I liked to do there. And in that process, I also found out that I really love consulting. I really enjoyed being able to, you just get to work from one project to the next. Like you're always constantly learning in consulting and being able to apply what you learned to these different subject areas. And I think one of the things I enjoy about it, and Pam and I can talk about it more, is that I think companies or governments, they don't generally hire you as a consultant to answer a problem that they already know how to solve. Like the thing is that they're inherently interesting problems, or they wouldn't go through the effort of finding a consultant. So I really enjoyed that. But I realized, with this history degree that I wanted to get a little bit more technical skills. I think history, I had a really great writing skills and that I use today, but I wanted to get more, statistics. And so I went back to school. I went to Hopkins. I got my MPH in global environmental sustainability and health. And, enjoyed it so much, I figured I'd stick around for the PhD. So similar to Pam, I got an environmental health sciences, focusing on environmental epi and exposure assessment. And my dissertation was in collaboration with the National Institutes of Environmental Health Sciences. I worked in chronic disease epi. So I was looking at chronic kidney disease in a large cohort of agricultural workers. And we were looking at heat stress and pesticide exposure and any association they might have with chronic kidney disease. And so when I was thinking about where I wanted to go after the PhD, consulting was always at the top of my list because I had such a fun time. And so I was thinking about different consulting firms. And one of the things that really drew me to Exponent was that in ICF, we had a lot of programmatic sort of responsibilities and tasks, which I like, but often it was like helping coordinate surveys and things like that. And what Exponent, what I really liked was I was talking to Pam and others, is how technical it was and how much it really relied on advanced degrees and PhDs. And so I joined Exponent. I'm having a great time. I've been here about 6 or 7 months now. So still kind of getting my footing a little bit. But yeah, that's kind of my path from applying widely and then kind of honing in on what I wanted to do over the last decade or so. Yeah.
Great, thank you.
Yeah. Should we?
Yeah, I mean, we have some slides.
Yeah.
on this one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's just grab whoever's gonna speak, just get a microphone so we're sure that it picks up on that.
Speak from the mic.
Okay, I mean, this is and got about Exponent. So I think we've been around for about more than 50 years now, since the 1960s. So I think, as Pam had mentioned, we started as out of an engineering firm and then have expanded to a number of different disciplines. And we have about 1,000 consultants. And then it's an international firm. So we have offices across the US, but also Europe and Asia. And it seems like they're opening offices, I think, frequently. Their new offices are being opened.
Yeah, no, that's true. There's, we were just opened a new office in Germany. They're definitely expanding. And just to kind of add on to what Emma said, so there's about 1,000 consulting staff and about 600 to 700 of those are PhD holders in those technical fields. And then we do have master's degree and bachelor degree holders. I'd say the health sciences group is one that actually has more master's degree holders because the MPH is a general degree. compared to some of our engineering groups where they're really looking for PhD level students, workers. But yeah, it's a nice mix. We do have offices all over the country. The health group tends to be based on the two coasts. So our headquarters is in Menlo Park, which is just South Bay, Bay Area. And then we have an office in Oakland, California that holds a lot of our health sciences group. And then we've got a nice little group growing here in the DC area, and then New York and Boston. So what we do have offices all over the country. Those that are looking for jobs in the health field, we most likely have to, one coast to the other is where we mostly are. So yeah, this is just, this slide is, an example. One of the reasons that we really liked looking at Exponent and what really drew me there was we have so many different technical areas that folks are trained in. So, and this just gives some examples. And we have mechanical engineers and thermal fire safety engineers, electrical vehicle engineers, human factors, people who, understand how we interact with our environment. Obviously we have the health group, and we also have environmental, earth sciences, ecological and biological sciences. And where this really comes into play is, we are a client driven company, right? So most of the work we do is going to depend on what questions our clients have. And sometimes a client will have a very specific question, and you'll know exactly what person, or what small team's going to work on it. But a lot of times, that's, as Emma said, they don't know how to solve the problem themselves. They're coming to us for help, and it will likely take a multidisciplinary team. We're going to want to bring in experts from all these different areas to help us problem solve. And I think I did know that Exponent, sometimes we won projects over other companies because we say, oh, we can also do that in-house, and we can do that part in-house. And we can build a team of 10 or 15 experts in different areas that will all together address the problem.
It's wild. We'll sometimes get like all email blasts out if you have a client will have this very particular problem. Like I think that one about pickleball noise complaints, and within like 5 minutes there's like a whole team that's assembled, be like, I have experience with noise complaints, I have experience, like I have a PhD in physics, and I can tell you how like the balls. Or we had one last week about carrot machines. Does anyone have? And sure enough, like within like 10 minutes, someone. I don't have expertise in carrot machines, so I didn't reply. But I think maybe to cut like mini carrots out of larger carrots, maybe something went wrong. But it's incredible. Within like 10 minutes, someone will be like, "Oh, we've got the team we need." So it's very cool.
Gosh.
Yeah.
How fun is that?
It's very fun.
I mean, baby carrots are come from big carrots, so yes.
So let's just keep on.
Yeah.
I'll let you guys continue.
Oh yeah.
We do have, I have more questions though. When you're yeah, very interesting.
Yeah, and so this is a list of the, some of the capabilities we have in the health sciences group. You see a lot of the technical disciplines you might expect. I work a lot on a daily basis with other industrial hygienists and epidemiologists and toxicologists. We do have a growing healthcare and life sciences group in pharmacoepi. So these are folks that are very interested in, every step of the drug phase, right? So from those clinical trials for drug safety and efficacy through post-marketing surveillance, and some of them are doing some work with electronic medical record databases. It's just, when I started 5.5 years ago, that didn't exist at all. So in the last just like 2 or 3 years, they've really grown. And then we work a lot with some of the practices that are very collaborative with us. And I think Emma has an example of this, but we have a chemical regulation and food safety group. We work with them a lot. And of course, we have a data sciences group that houses a lot of biostatisticians that, of course, we collaborate with frequently. And then, so Emma and I have a couple of like little vignettes.
Right.
Some of our examples.
Yeah.
Give you an idea.
If you're there, why don't you guys sit up there comfortably?
Yeah, sure.
You can adjust those chairs to sit wherever you want. Over.
Yeah, I just move it over.
Yeah. That microphone.
Oh yeah, sure.
You're up first.
Okay, we'll just. That's perfect. Thank
Oh,
you.
yeah, no, I got it.
Okay, so yeah.
To push the little one with the square on it.
This one has no battery.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Hello?
Yeah,
Okay, there we go.
got it.
Okay, so, yeah, no, Pam and I wanted just to explain some of the variety of the interesting projects that we get to work on here at Exponent. And one bucket I work in is in nutritional epi and food safety. So the DC office has a large chem-reg food safety practice. And they often need epi support or they need biophysical support and programming. So I want to share a couple of case examples here. So oftentimes we'll have clients that maybe have questions about policy guidelines or decisions, or they have regulatory requirements, or they just have a desire to understand the landscape on a particular nutrient and health outcome. Or for instance, I have here the dietary guidelines for Americans. So things like that, they might want to. Hello?
It's the only part.
Yeah, okay, I'll just
I think we should just pass that. Yeah. A recording.
So just to understand, like, provide some context, so, a lot of times, maybe it's, they wanna understand, what's coming up in dietary guidelines, understanding that landscape. So one project I've been working on, has been, we've been working with a client that has come up with, and trying to understand, beverage intake, in particular caffeine consumption, among, Americans, particularly during COVID, and so we've been working on my responsibility is working on the statistical analysis and running the coding and the programming. But there's one paper out where they were looking at beverage intake broadly. So I put this up. Actually, one of the authors here is also a fellow Hopkins alum, Ben Davis, who's an EHU a couple years ago. And so this is just an example of, oftentimes providing some statistical support to projects. We also, I've been working on.
Before you leave that one, can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
Who requests, is it like a beverage company or what kind of? I mean, you don't have to say the exact one, but are they companies or is this government or who, what are they gonna do with this?
Yeah, so this, oftentimes, will be for like trade associations or consortiums of companies. And so for this case, they're interested in understanding like what is the intake of caffeine among Americans by age group, by type of caffeine source, so they understand when the dietary guidelines for Americans come out, so they kind of have a step ahead, so they know what people are consuming, so they can, respond if there's anything relevant to it, to that. So it's sort of, in this case, yeah, it very much depends. So it can be, in this case, for food, it can be food companies or trade associations that will hire us.
Interesting. Yeah, I know you have to be a little careful. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
But thank you. Go ahead.
Sure. And so like for another instance, we've been working on large systematic reviews looking at different health outcomes and beverage intake. So things like type 2 diabetes and beverage consumption. And in the case where I said, it's oftentimes in consulting that we'll hire you because it's a difficult question to solve. So we already know what the research says on, sugar sweetened beverages and type 2 diabetes risk. No one's asking us to review that literature. But it becomes more complicated when you think about what about coffee consumption and type 2 diabetes risk. And then it, becomes, you peel off the layers, like, well, a black coffee and type 2 diabetes risk, or is a mocha frappuccino coffee, and and so there's a lot of kind of looking through the literature and helping companies or associations understand what that landscape says. So things like type 2 diabetes, we're looking at we've also been looking at cognition and beverage consumption. Right now I'm also working on some statistical programming for a caramel food coloring and dietary assessments, trying to understand how much various age groups are consuming of different caramel food colorings, because it's in way more foods than you would think, actually. But so that's just sort of like a sense of some of that sort of work. On the top, on the top is on top.
Oh, yeah. It's a little.
I do.
Well, I have mine on.
No, how do I switch to the next?
Oh,
there,
sorry.
oh, that-
I'll just show you how to turn on and off.
Oh, okay, perfect. No, I was trying to advance. this slide.
Oh, you would. So that's on and off.
Got it.
Don't use this to advance this.
Okay.
Pretty cool though. Yeah, so one of the examples I have, is also a good example of what can be so fun about scientific consulting, in that you will very likely end up working on things that you knew nothing about when you joined. And this is very true for me. So I do a lot of work now in the field, in the area of electric and magnetic fields for EMF. So, you know, EMF is produced anywhere that electricity is generated or used. So we are effectively surrounded by EMF from all of our electrical appliances and the wiring in our buildings, and of course the power lines inside. So the client here is often utility companies when they want to, you know, build new power lines, or maybe even just upgrade existing lines. You often need a permit from the state or county. You know, there's usually, every state has a different way of doing it. But most states you have to get some sort of approval, and as part of that process, they often have to submit an application that goes through, you know, the construction schedule, what the design will look like, and then of course any impacts on people, on the environment, environmental impact assessment, noise, all of that. So one of the areas is, you know, will this project increase the electric and magnetic field exposures to the residents and the, you know, who are living along the street where the line is, or the people playing in the park nearby. And so this is an area that I've become an expert in, even though 5 years ago I know very little about it. So this is also an example of a multidisciplinary project. So we work a lot with the the electrical engineering practice. And the electrical engineers will either go out to the site if there are existing lines, and they can take measurements of the electric and magnetic fields. Or if it's a proposed project, they can take the data from the utility company and model what the anticipated levels might be. And then it comes over to us and the scientists, me and Emma and some of our colleagues, and we help to put those exposure estimates into context with what we know from the science about potential health effects. So kind of day to day, what does this look like? Well, I'm pretty much an expert in the epidemiology literature related to electric and magnetic field exposures, and, you know, cancer, reproductive and developmental effects, neurological, neurodegenerative diseases, Parkinson's, Alzheimer's. Our job is to stay very current on the research, to know what these studies have come out, what they're saying, but also to have an understanding of the full body of literature, so we can put any individual study into context with the broader literature. And this also includes, there's like the World Health Organization and a lot of other scientific and health agencies have periodically put out reviews of the scientific literature, so we need to know, be familiar with those and what the conclusions are. So we do a lot of report writing for our clients. We summarize the epi literature and the tox literature. We put together fact sheets and other deliverables that they can give to the residents and others. So it's a lot of taking all of that scientific knowledge and distilling it down into something that's more accessible to the general public. And then the other part to this, which I've come to really enjoy, is the science communication part. I go to public meetings and hearings and speak and testify on, the science of electric and magnetic fields and health. And so I've had to get really good, and I'm still learning, of course, we all improve as we go, in taking all of that very technical information and explaining it to this various stakeholders, right? And we all know that it's very different to talk to another scientist about epi studies than it is the public. And sometimes these meetings can be very challenging. I like to use Parks and Rec as the example. So, not all meetings are like that, but sometimes they are pretty heated. And folks understandably have a lot of questions and concerns, and it's my job or whoever's speaking to make those people feel like they're being heard and their questions are being answered, right? That you're not just giving them some canned line that you have that you want to say, that you're actually taking the time to listen to them and responding to their specific concern. But also giving them an accurate and complete understanding of what the science says. So I've spent a lot of the last few years not only learning and evaluating the epi literature, but then also learning how to talk about it to the general public.
And before you go on, did you have any background in health communication before, or is this completely new?
It's pretty new. I mean, I like, I've certainly given lots of scientific talks, and I've done some, teaching of courses to undergrads and things, but in terms of, being the expert in the room that, is having to distill all this information down. No, this was new for me. And I work with someone, we both do, who's been doing this for like 40 years. He's been in the field a long time. He's highly regarded, one of our principal scientists, and I learned a lot from him. Of course, he's shared tips and tricks along the way, and I got to start with some milder, maybe easier, things, and work my way into some of the more contentious projects. And actually, so this slide here, this is public, anybody can find this, which is why I put it up here. But this was back in September. Excel Energy is a utility company. They're all over the country, but this was specific to Colorado. And they had asked me to put together a virtual info session on EMF. And then it was advertised everywhere. So on that first line, it says this virtual meetings presentation will be given by environmental and occupational health scientist Dr. Pam Dopart, a subject matter expert and the and this was on their website. This was in their local newspaper. Like, wow, this is out there. So getting used to the idea that is now me. It's taking some time, but it's very rewarding and interesting.
How many people went to that?
That particular one was actually not that well attended. It really depends on the interest and concern in the community, and honestly how organized they are. I've been to some very contentious ones where folks have, they got 50, 75 people. We're all going to come at 5 o'clock to this meeting and stand in this spot, and raise our questions. And then other times, if it's not if folks aren't too concerned about it, then we might not get a lot. But a lot of times the requirement is still that you make that information available, right? So if people want to know, they have an opportunity to come learn. Yeah.
Oh, great. So this is an area that's totally new to me. I didn't even really knew it existed before I even started consulting. Like, you'd ask me what litigation was, and I'm like, I don't know, law and order. Like, I didn't have much of a sense of it. But it's kind of like forensics and epidemiology. So it's a very small part of what I do, but some other folks in the firm do. And in this case, I think there's okay. So in this case, it's using epidemiological methods for causal inference for illegal decision making. And so I think by way of an example, we have I'm working on one case with a medical device company, and there's a manufactured material in that device, and then there's some sort of concerns about carcinogenicity of that material. And so we'll go through a number of different types of methods. No, that's okay. Trying to understand that landscape and what's in the material, what is in this material? What does the epi literature say on this particular material and different cancer outcomes? We might do some probabilistic risk assessment, trying to understand if someone uses that device, what is their intake of that particular material? Industrial hygiene in some cases for litigation, not in this particular case. We have these statistical analyses. We do a lot of medical chart reviews, so trying to understand what the history is, what's the relevant information. And so this is, yeah, something that, okay, something that's totally new to me. And you know, some people at Exponent have really made a lot of their careers out of this space. And I just thought I would just mention it because, yeah, I had no idea it existed before starting at Exponent. And I think, you know, it's not something that I think we, you know, sort of thinking it again, you don't have necessarily have vocabulary until you sort of become aware of something. This is one of those areas. Yeah, so it's really interesting just to sort of learn more about that next year.
And then the last example we have, I included it just because, and this is very broad, of course, but I would say a lot of the work we do in health group is around human health risk assessment, and a lot of the work I do outside of BMF is in this area. You know, and you guys are probably very familiar with this process, but you know, from the hazard identification through the dose response assessment and the exposure assessment, all the way to the risk characterization. This is a collaborative team of exposure assessment, you know, industrial hygienists, epidemiologists, toxicologists, biostatisticians. And so, you know, what does it look like day to day? Well, we're writing a lot of reports and reading the literature, looking at all the agency, you know, what did EPA and ATSDR, you know, what is everybody, where did they get their values and their risk assessments from? And you know, it can be, and Melissa was asking earlier, the clients here are often, you know, industry or trade groups, and the question that they're usually trying to get at is one of two things. Either they're proactively trying to understand their products, the chemical that they're concerned about, like Emma said earlier with her nutrition example, sometimes they just want to get ahead of what they think is coming out so they can get a handle on it. And other times it's kind of the opposite, where we're responding to something that, you know, EPA or FDA or somebody has to put out. So they might ask us to review a risk assessment and, you know, what are the strengths? Where are the data gaps? You know, do you agree with the studies they selected? Why or why not? Are there other studies that they didn't evaluate that might also be good here? You know, and it's not always adversarial. Sometimes they just genuinely want to know and get a better understanding for where this data came from. So we're on the phone a lot with our clients, explaining what we've come across. We're on the phone a lot with each other. I haven't done it yet, but every once in a while, someone will actually go in front of EPA or FDA and explain our analyses and kind of where any, you know, discrepancies or questions might be. And so I do this on a regular basis, and so does Emma, for, you know, certainly I do a lot of occupational exposure assessment, and community-based work, but we do a lot of consumer product related things too. So I work right now, I've been working for like 4 years with a very large international company that makes a lot of household and consumer products. And this is a proactive project where they're not being required to do this, but they want to kind of go through the screening process for all the different chemicals that they have in their products to get an understanding of, are there any concerns, you know, where should we be targeting our efforts, where might there be challenges on the line. So again, just very broad, but it's one of the things that I think we work on pretty regularly. Okay, that's it.
Great,
Thank
thank you
you.
so much. One of the best presentations of the year.
So interesting.
It's I'm learning so much because it's, you know, one step out of anything I've done. So I have a series of questions, but I would go ahead.
I have a question. So I like watching you guys like go through your kind of journey to get where you are was really interesting. Like there were some like parallels with my own and also differences. So I actually came before starting my PhD, I worked at finance and I was an investment analyst, which is like very similar in a lot of veins to this. Like you're working on different like investments, you're becoming an expert in like some random you're becoming an expert in like some random business that you're like, I'm not a week ago, if this is on.
Oh, sorry, I turned it off.
It'll be fine, like everything is still being captured in it as well. The ceiling lights are.
Like a week ago, I never would have thought that I would be like an expert in how like an oil and gas company like functions, right? And then we also like interface a lot with business consultants. So for me, like when I think consulting, I think like
finance and business consulting, but this is obviously very different. And I think there's like a reputation in the like in the business consulting side of it being like very cutthroat, and like that work-life balance. And I'm just like wondering if like you like how you feel kind of like this more scientific consulting side like differs, and you know whether or not like just like kind of like where you think the divide is there.
Yeah, we've got some multi-experience.
Sure.
So yeah, well, not having been in any sort of business.
Yeah, fair.
But I would say, you know, I think Exponent's a fun place because I think everyone is kind of, like I said, a lot of us have advanced degrees, we're all kind of nerds. And so one of the best things about Exponent is that everyone's really nice to work with. And I don't feel like it's cutthroat. And maybe part of that too is, again, everyone has different backgrounds, and oftentimes there are these projects that require engineers, that require health scientists, that require, and so there's different shoes to fill. I think that helps a lot too. And then in terms of work-life balance, I would say, yeah, I mean, I've only been here about 6 or 7 months, but I think one of the nice things about Exponent too is that they realize in order for you to to become a better consultant, they need to make sure that you have time for professional development. So for instance, there's something called I'm gonna go too much into detail, but your utilization. So how much of your day is spent sort of billable, that the Exponent's making money off of you essentially, versus how much of your time is professional development. And that part, they want you to have a section of percentage of your time, 20-30%, that's spent towards like getting your and a CIH, or in my case, finishing up PhDs in publications, recognizing that expertise is needed to continually become a better consultant and get that business. So in that sense, I think there's a real balance. At least that's my understanding from Exponent and how I've experienced it. So and then just recognizing too that if you're working, if they burn you out, then you're gonna get tired, you'll make mistakes. So it's also a quality thing, not just a quantity thing.
Yeah.
And I felt that very much so far at Exponent.
Yeah, well, I kind of have a similar question in that. So I'm a 4th year, I'm going to be graduating in a year, maybe-ish. And so we'll see, but it's like, and I've definitely thought about going into consulting. I've been a trainee or fellow or student all my life, and I'm kind of tired of that. So, but I have friends that work at Booz Allen Hamilton, RTI, Paragon, Deloitte, and like, I don't mean for this to sound like an ad, but like, what makes, like, for me, it's all consulting, and like, I just don't know. I don't want to say who to choose, but I want work-life balance. I want like professional development goals. I want, I don't want to be working 80 hours a week and get burned out in 6 months, which is like stereotypical of consulting. But like how, I guess, how does like consulting work? How does it work at Exponent? Like, what are your views of how like consulting in general, I guess? As opposed to working a 9-to-5 job at a state health agency or something like that.
Yeah, maybe, I know Emma, you work so closely with Baltimore City, you might have a perspective about the difference, I don't know.
Yeah.
Either of you, of course. I think the crux of his question is why consulting versus like government? And you might also have, Pam, from your time at NCI, some thoughts on that.
And maybe like what things can help, if you like looking at different firms, like what things, sorry, to piggyback onto a question that's not my own. Like if you're looking at different firms, like what things would you look out for to be like, this is a really good firm to work for versus not as much, like other things that while you're applying?
Yeah, sure. So yeah, I worked in government with Baltimore City, and then a little bit again with clients for government, and consulting. I mean, I've enjoyed both. I think again, one of the things I really like about consulting, in particular Exponent, is that the questions that you're being asked are things that are not easy to answer, or they wouldn't go through the trouble of, coming up with a contract and signing it, and so they're not easy, and I think that's something that I like about consulting, and two, is oftentimes, I like that there's often, some of the projects I work on are, over a year or two, but a lot of times they're, a week or two, and so you have to come up with like, innovative, quick solutions to things, and it's fun, and so I really will enjoy that. And then in terms of like how to figure out what consulting firm you want to work for, I think there's a couple different ways to go about that. I think one is, when you're interviewing, think about interviewing as a two-way exchange, like they're interviewing you, but you're also interviewing them. And so ask people, like what is the culture like? What is your day like? So that's something I definitely did when I was looking at different firms. And just like, how well do you get along with the people that you're interviewing with? What is your kind of gut saying? Certainly you can look at things like Glassdoor, but I think those are only so helpful because it's kind of like an Amazon review. Like someone's gonna really love the product or they're gonna hate the product. You're not gonna get a lot of 3-star reviews. So, and I think too, one of the reasons I joined Exponent is I knew people from Hopkins had come, and so getting to sort of learn and talk about people and learning from their experience. So yeah, stop there, but yeah.
Yeah, I think Emma had a lot of the key points. To your point, Steve, yeah, there's some similarities to all consulting companies, right? Like, we are client driven, right? So our clients, the things we work on largely, not always, but are mostly driven by what our client needs from us, what topics and problems out there right now are in demand. So if there's something that you are passionate about, you either have to figure out a way to make it marketable, right? Or if it's not already something that we're doing, or it may have to kind of fall to not that you can do it all, but you'd have to supplement it with work in areas that are of greater need. A part of it I think is knowing your personality type. So I know, and I've known for a long time, that I'm extroverted. I thrive in fast-paced environments, so I like that projects, like I said, a lot of them could only be a few days or a few weeks, and then they're off your desk. You're working on a lot of different things, and each project I'm on, I'm in a different role. Sometimes I'm the technical expert, sometimes I'm support, sometimes I'm project management, and I like that variety. Deadlines sometimes they come up quick, but if you're a very organized person, if you don't find that paralyzing, then that can be good. And I just, there's a lot I like about academia to compare and contrast, but I got a little too, sometimes I felt like I was a little too in the weeds, and I had to really put a lot of effort into reminding myself what the bigger picture was, and there always is a bigger picture, of course. But I sometimes struggle to find it, or remember it in like the days that I'm like locked away on my computer for hours at a time. And I just, after a year or two on the same project, I would often find myself wanting to work on something else. And I think that in academia you find that balance, but I knew myself well enough to know that I wanted to do something else. I think Emma made some really good points about how trying to figure out the firm. When you are interviewing, it's really good to ask to talk with people you would be working with regularly. So certainly your supervisor, but also other team members. Exponent, I think, does a pretty good job of that. We have like a large meet with a panel of people throughout the day, but there are some times when I think, if you're interviewing other places where you meet mostly with HR, or you meet mostly with a very higher up person that's not going to be collaborating with you day to day. They're just going to be somebody you occasionally check in with. So make sure you're asking the kinds of questions about who you'll be working with day to day, what your day-to-day job will look like Emma said. I think you can get a lot between the lines from asking people what they do day to day, what they enjoy, how they get their projects. That's a question we get sometimes, is how do you, as a brand new out of school person, are you responsible for going out there and getting business? Because I wouldn't know where to start, and at a good consulting firm? The answer is no, right? There's people, it's other, you're a supervisor and other people's jobs to support you and help you find projects, and you kind of naturally get your own projects over time. But asking those kinds of questions, I think, can play a lot.
Two more things there. So I think one thing too about it, at least at Exponent, is how much of a team effort projects are. And that I think also makes it, fun. And one of the things that I think has been, really revolutionary for me in Exponent is everything is QC. And I think back to my PhD and how little of it was QC. You just have to accept that things are done correctly. But I think it just makes it like it's a very much a team environment, and we're all sort of, checking each other and making sure that things are going well. And then too, just in terms of like, working 80 hours a week. I mean, I would say at Exponent, I haven't worked more than 50 hours, and that's like the exception. So I do feel like it's definitely a work-life balance, and people are under it. Like a lot of people have young kids or I'm a part of like a parent group, and there's like a caretaker group. And I think good firms realize that to keep talent and retain talent, you have to care about the whole person. And I do feel like Exponent does a good job of that.
Okay, I'm gonna kind of go into the how you get your business and then mission, and so I can imagine that it sounds super exciting to have all these short and long and bizarre projects that might come down the pike, and you're like, yeah, why not? But I wonder how you handle projects that come to you and you're asked to handle them, that you may be wondering about the client and why they're asking this, and you may just be wondering, I'm not saying about the ethics exactly, but you're asked to do an analysis and you're thinking naturally, what are they going to do with this analysis? Does that ever come up, and if so, how do you handle it? That's a hard question, sorry.
No, it's a fair question. And yes, scientific consulting firms in general, I think, get asked questions like that from time to time. Who are your clients? What kinds of businesses do you represent? And it's a totally fair question. I'll say that I have never once worked on anything that has made me feel uncomfortable or that I'm uncertain about. And I think a large part of that is because of Exponent's mission and kind of the way we do business, but also we do have a lot of personal say in what we do and do not work on. So like all of the projects I'm working on right now are projects I want to work on. A lot of them are in the areas that I'm trying to grow my own clients and so I'm kind of steering that ship. And similarly, I am her supervisor, but it largely just in title. Like we are not on that many projects together. Emma kind of drives her own career path and what she wants to do at Exponent. And my job is to support her and help her grow in that area. When a project comes in, the majority of our clients are repeat clients. So most of our business comes from establishing good relationships with existing clients, doing good work for them so that they come back. So most of the time we're not faced with problems like that because we know our clients now, we know what the end products are being used for, we have relationships with them. Absolutely, we've been kind of cold called out of nowhere by some firm or some attorney or someone we've never heard of before, and they've got questions for us. And the first step is always to get as much information as we can. Who are the parties involved in this? What's the information you're looking for? What will you use it for? We run a conflict of interest check to make sure there's no conflicts with anything we're currently doing for any of our clients. And we have the right to turn down the work. Right? We don't want to get involved in that, or sometimes a client will call me up and you can kind of tell right away what answer they're looking for us to say. I can tell you right now, we're not going to be able to say that. Like, do you still want us to do this work? We will just give you the objective scientific answer. But if what you're looking for is someone to say this is safe or this is dangerous or whatever, that's not us. And then we don't get the business sometimes. And that's okay.
Well, that's good to know. And I think that's another, I don't know how you kind of assess that as someone who might be trying to get a job at a consulting firm, but that would be, for a lot of people, I think, an important thing to know. That what their process is for dealing with business that comes in that doesn't sort of fit with the mission. And then the other thing that you kind of answered is, you know, what happens if you do an analysis or a review or something and the results come out in a way that the client doesn't like? Do they, is there some kind of clause in the contracts that say that you're allowed to publish that anyway, or how does that work? I mean, Hopkins is really, you know, you can't, if we're on this project, you're paying us for this project, we have scientific integrity to put the results out, but that's not necessarily a given outside of academia, and you know, people that try to give me grants all the time try to cut that off as well, and our research administration has to insist. So it's, you know, not something that doesn't occur, you know, it's not a problem that we don't face as well, but I'm wondering how, when you face it, what do you do? Or is it something that's baked into the contracts?
Yeah, that's a good question. We do love to try as much as we can to add into our contracts the right to publish. Understandably, not all clients are up for that, for a multitude of reasons. And, you know, sometimes after we do the analysis, you know, we tell them, you may want to publish this anyway, like regardless of what the answer is, this would be good to have this out in the scientific space. And some of our clients are very receptive to that, and some maybe not. We do our analysis, you know, the scientific correct, you know, the right way, and our results are what they are. Our reports, as Emma said, they get thoroughly QC'd, so everything is verified. We give the client the final product. What they then do with that, whether they decide to submit that to EPA or not, it's ultimately up to them. You know, we can certainly explain to them our process, how we got where we did, how it might differ from what someone else might do. We certainly do a lot of sensitivity analyses, right? You can look at a couple different options that are all reasonable.
Yeah.
I have given clients bad news, right? You know, we're like,
Yeah.
this is too high, right? This is an issue, right? And the best clients are like, thank you, we wanted to know. Now, task 2, how do we bring this down?
Right.
Like, you know, work with us now to come up with an acceptable level or whatever it may be. But yeah, sometimes it's okay, thank you very much, and then you kind of wonder what they do next. Do they go to another firm and look for the answer they want? I don't know.
Yeah. No, I think, kind of echoing what Pam said, and too, I think it's also it's the firm's reputation on the line, but it's also your name on the line, and that I think matters a lot too. And yeah, just like I think Pam said, sometimes if it is, you know, in one project where we did sort of have bad news, quote unquote, and again, the thing is like, okay, well then one of the things that's nice about it, let's assemble a team of engineers and something like, how do we fix this? So it's sort of like, so those are the, you know, the fun projects. You can work with companies that are like, okay, we know this, what can we do about it? So I think I think that comes to like the repeat clients that you have, and you establish the ones that you want to work for. You can always, and that's kind of does turn clients away that you don't want to work with. Yeah.
I think it's all.
All right, doing like your vignettes, I think you touched on an aspect of your job that I think is actually a common thread with consulting and also in academia, which was like keeping up to date on the current literature, right? Which I think sounds easy. It's just like, oh, you just read and stay up to date. But like, right. I think it's actually hard. It's something that I personally really struggle with. Like, how do I how do I ensure that I'm seeing everything that I need to see to be up to date, right? Like, because you can't, right? So I'm just curious, like, how, you know, since that it seems like that's a large part of your guys' job as well. Like, what approaches do you guys take to do that? And do you feel like it's similar kind of to what you would do in academia when you're, you know, I need to be up to date on whatever this aspect of my dissertation is, or, you know?
So sometimes Yeah. So sometimes like a project will actually require like reviewing the literature, so you can kind of like kill two birds with one stone as much as I hate that saying. Otherwise, sometimes, if you think, because I think consulting too, sometimes it's feast or famine. Sometimes it's really busy and sometimes it's not as busy. And so if you know that you have like a particularly light week coming ahead, or you just want to prioritize getting that paper out, you can just say, right now I'm not going to take on another project at the moment. I'm gonna block off, a couple of days to keep updated on the literature, finish this sensitivity analysis. And I think too, again, part of the things about Exponent too, they want to know what your professional development goals are. It's part of their evaluation of you as a consultant. And so I think knowing that too, it's not just your billable hours, but how are you advancing your career? And so I think that as well. But yeah, just kind of working with what your schedule is.
Yeah, no, I think that's exactly right. I mean, ideally, we get to bill time for staying up to date on, like it's built into our agreement. Sometimes though, it's so hard. It's absolutely hard. We have like RSS feeds sometimes, or RSS feeds that will kind of ping you when the articles come out on topics you're interested in. If I have a call coming up with a potential client, it won't be billable, but I may spend an hour or two doing a literature search for the most recent articles so that I have something of value to say to that client when we're talking, right? I'm trying to show why I'm an expert in this area and you should hire me. So I gotta be familiar with at least, the seminal article or something or what I posted last year. But yeah, I mean, oftentimes you get a few months behind, that's going on. It's not a perfect system for sure. And so then when a new project comes up, you sometimes are trying to, quickly trying to think about it.
Yeah, that makes sense, and I guess just like logistically, what do you set alerts so that you get, it's so taking that, do you set an alert so that when something gets published in DNF, you get an alert, or do you set off time in your week where you're like, I'm gonna take an hour and just go on PubMed and just Google around?
Both, and then some of these groups have or some of these topics have groups that have logs. Like I'm on an EPA log watch, and once a week they come out with everything that's going on in EPA that week. If there's a couple EMF groups that new publications that have come out in the last month or whatever, they talk about them. So you can find groups that do the hard work for you. And we have a wonderful library services group that will run searches for us and pull articles, and so you can definitely check in with them from time to time and say, hey, can you see if there's anything new on this topic published within the last 9 months or whatever. And they'll do it.
Thanks. That's nice.
Yeah.
Go in us.
Talk a little bit more about the different roles that you get to play. I mean, I was wondering, when something comes out, how often do you get to be the boss of the project? The small project, how often do you play the role? You said, Pam, that you play multiple roles, and how in your career progression, like Emma coming in somewhat new, how do you move across those roles? How does someone coming out with newly with a PhD get to be, in charge of projects rather than just responding? I mean, not that everybody always wants to be in charge of projects, but certainly for professional development, it's a good thing to be able to do. So how does that progression happen within, the time frame you're there? And then it sounds like it continue to play different roles throughout your time there. So can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, sure. I'll start and explain or talk through her experiences. So when you join Exponent as, especially someone right out of school or a few years out of school, we're not talking about, principal level experts who's obviously very seasoned in their field. My advice to everyone new when they start is just to try to work with as many different people as you can on as many different projects. And that's where the role comes in, right? So my first year, there were projects where someone knew that I had a background in industrial hygiene, so they would ask me to QC or review their exposures because they knew that I had that background. Or there was an epi project and they knew that I was comfortable with epi literature, so they would ask me to, read the relevant epi articles and summarize them. So in the beginning, you do a lot of the technical tasks, right? You review, you write a lot, you review a lot of papers, you QC or review other people's work on these tasks. And these tasks can be standalone or they could be part of a bigger project, and you slowly start to learn more about the other pieces of the project. As you keep going, you start to get the opportunity to be the project manager of that small task and then increasingly large tasks. So you may still also have a technical role, but you're also the person now making sure that the deliverable is getting out on time, that you're staying on budget, that the client is getting frequent updates as to how it's going, any issues that might be happening. You're wrangling team members together to make sure that they're all on the same page and they're agreeing with one another. And that is a role that doesn't really ever end. You'll continue to project manage your own projects and other people's projects generally throughout your career. What changes is you go from helping out on a small technical part to eventually leading that technical part. Where now someone, instead of asking you to QC it, they're going to ask you to write it, right? And someone else will QC it. And then where I'm at now in my career is I'm in charge of getting the deliverable out, and I need to find one person who can write it and one person who can QC it, and then I kind of I look it all over and make sure that I'm in the process. I certainly still write and QC myself, but in addition to, I'm now also making sure that the whole process is working. And as time goes on, and as clients start to recognize your name more and more, and you're in more calls with them, and you're emailing them more, they start coming directly to you in their platforms, rather than going to somebody more senior. And before you over time, that client has now become your client. And now they come to you with questions. And that's how you start to grow your book of business, so that eventually, if you want to be, not everybody has the goal of being a principal at our company, but if you want to be a principal, that's how you get there, is by growing your client base. And that just starts with the client getting to know you at the most basic level, and you prepare some material for them. Yeah.
No, I'm echoing what Pam said, and I think, I'm project manager on a couple small projects, and I think it's all really kind of incremental, and mentorship, I think also really helps. So I'm a project manager on one small project that's similar to another project that, Pam had me help work on, and sort of understand that landscape. It's helping a company with submitting some documents to the EPA. So you sort of start on small projects, get used to that, and then you sort of incrementally, I think, get more responsibility to get to try things out. And again, I think because it's so team-based, I think that helps as well. So you have a question about an invoice or something like that, there's always people that you can ask, and they're willing to help. Because if they realize too that the future of the company is dependent on the people that you bring in that are going to eventually fill your shoes. So.
I'm not used to asking so many questions during these things.
So is there anything you recommend that people have? I know you said, Pam, that people coming out with a PhD from Hopkins generally have a lot of skills to bring to the table. Are there any sort of specific things that you would recommend to students who are thinking about consultancy in a consultancy company like Exponent? Any classes they should take or any experiences they should get that would set them up well to succeed or get a job in and enjoy and succeed in a role like you both have?
Yeah, I mean, I would say for at least the health sciences, I do feel like risk assessment, and Hopkins has a lot of courses in risk assessment. That certainly has come in handy. I would say a lot of it, if you have, you have a PhD or a master's, you're going to have the requisite skills and sort of figuring out if you enjoy it and it's a good fit. So I think sort of thinking about, do you like kind of being able to pivot from project to project, or are you someone who really wants to focus on one thing for a long time? And so I would say, like, for your PhD, trying to explore that and understanding the work dynamic or environment that you enjoy working in. I think that's probably the more crucial thing for success, is being willing, seeing if you like that and are want to adapt and do different things versus focusing on one area. Because I think if you have the degree, you have the skills, but do you enjoy?
I agree completely. Yeah, I think risk assessment is a good example. I think, most master's and PhD programs cover the basics, and certainly if you have never taken an epi course, you've never taken a biostats course, maybe take one just so you have you may not ever want to do a lot of work in that area, but just being able to have a conversation at a very high level can be so helpful. But on the other end of that, if you are really interested in a certain area, if you like occupational health, if you like chronic disease epi, that's own that too, like learn a little bit more about that area, learn as much as you can about that area so that when you come, that's an area that you can jump right in on, and you may even have more technical expertise than people who've been there who have been there for a while, and they'll come to you right off the bat and say, I understand you did your PhD and leukemia, like tell me about can you review this for me? And I think to Emma's point, we've had some folks who have left within their first year because for many reasons. I mean, sometimes there's just the fit isn't there, but some folks realize that they're really passionate about their PhD research area, and that's wonderful. And you should go and find a career that will let you carry that through. If you feel that strongly about it, scientific consulting might not be the right area, because again, you may absolutely work in that area. Many of us do, but you'll need to expand beyond that as well. And you won't necessarily get to go as in depth as you would in like an academic career. So as I said, I think you're really honest about what you like, what drives you. If it's more scientific investigation in general, then consulting might be a great fit. If you're super passionate about your particular dissertation topic, or question, then yeah, maybe academics.
I mean, just as a final question, do you see yourself staying at Exponent for a while? Like, what's the next steps?
Well, that's a hard question for them.
I'm
Are you gonna quit next week?
no, no. It's like, do you want to continue in consulting for the rest of your career, or do you want to jump back to academia? Like, I don't know. Yeah.
And I have one after that, so if that's uncomfortable for you, you can pass.
I'll take a shot. I mean, well, the reality of academia is I don't think I could go back at this point. I have not been keeping up. I'm not publishing at the rate that I was or anything like that. I really enjoy consulting. I really like Exponent in general. We had a lot of folks leave, not a lot, but some folks during the pandemic, and this is true of my friends at other consulting companies too. People kind of moved around a lot. And now, so even though it's only been 5.5 years, I've now actually been there quite a bit longer than some of the other folks at my level. So I feel like I'm in a good spot right now. I'm really growing in the technical areas that I've been trying to develop. So I certainly don't have any plans to leave. And if I, career-wise, long-term career-wise, I mean, maybe another consulting firm, I guess possibly government. Yeah, I see myself very much in the application side of the public health world than the research side.
And I'm not gonna make Emma.
No, I really enjoy consulting. I don't see myself going back into academia. There's things that I loved about academia, but I think I just really have fun. And I think as long as I'm having fun, like you spend 40 hours, you should have fun at your job. And I think as long as I'm having fun, I think fun to stick around with it. So.
Okay, real last question is, how does someone learn about positions available? Da, da, da. Look at that.
Oh, wow.
It's almost like it was planted.
We did not plan this really.
Yeah, so, you know, Pam and I, we have our email addresses, we have actually have a brand new website, so feel free to take a look around there too. And we have a career section, and then, Jenny's great, she's a recruiter that I've worked with and interviewed, with, and she's also a great contact, and, you know, excellent, we're always looking for great talent, and, you know, we're just sort of starting our university recruitment for the next year, but.
Yeah, sure. So I'm on the recruiting team for the health group, so I'll throw a pitch here. Yeah, so, please, you know, if anyone listening is interested in wants to learn more, please reach out to Emma and I. You can absolutely send us your resumes. You can send them to Jenny, our HR recruiter. If you go to our website, there are some open job positions right now. These are positions where we have identified a hiring manager who has a very specific need that they're looking for. So those are the jobs that you'll see on there. We are working on our 2024 business plan, so more of those jobs will start being posted. But as Emma said, our general philosophy is we're just always looking for a good fit and good talent. So we talk to people throughout the year. If you don't see a specific job opening that matches that looks like a fit for you, but you're still interested, just reach out to us. If you're not graduating for a year or so, but you just we have a little stay in touch section of folks that we just periodically reach out to and say hi. So we love to add people to that as well. So if you're interested in learning more, you can reach out to Emma and I directly or HR if you would like to go that route.
That's terrific. Thank you so much for all that information, and I would guess that you'll get some calls from the people that will listen either asynchronously or here. So this was one of the best sessions of the whole speaker series. Thanks for all your preparation, and you gave us so many great insights, because I for one have never done consulting, so it was the processes are all kind of new for me, and I just learned a ton. So thank you. I'm sure the students that will listen to this later and our students here learned a lot too. So thanks so much, and let's chat and get some food. Oh, hi. Good for you. I'm going to close the session, but feel free to introduce yourself to the speakers and while you're having some time.
Awesome.
Thanks.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks.
Yeah. Oh, are you okay?
It was almost bad. Ben, what should I introduce yourself to the speakers?
Nice to meet you.
Yeah, so we had 3 of us had a class,
Oh, okay.
Dr. Minutes, so